I think you could make a strong argument that this is the most important cinema camera that Sony has ever released. It's the brand new FX5, and it might look a lot like an FX3, its precursor, but everything inside this camera is brand new. For years, if you didn't want to plunk down over $50,000 for a Sony Venice, there was always some kind of weird compromise with all of their cinema cameras, from the screen placement on the FS100 and 700 where you couldn't see the screen if the camera was above your head, to the omission of electronic viewfinders on the FX3 and the FX6, to the FX2 with its emphasis on photographic features and weirdly slow reading sensor. There's always been some odd compromise with Sony cameras, until now. I'm Jordan Drake, this is PetaPixel, and this camera is something completely new and unexpected from Sony. Okay, I'm gonna give you all a peek behind the curtain. I have had extremely limited time with this camera. We're talking like a day, which is why this is not gonna be a full review. And if you're in that kind of time crunch, you don't have time to go looking through giant libraries of bad licensed music. You need good music you can search easily, and that's why I love audio. They have a massive library of rights-free music made by actual human beings, no AI music there. And what's cool is they offer lifetime access to this whole music library. But usually that's going for $500, a totally fair asking price, but I can do way better for you. If you use coupon code PetaPixel199, you can get lifetime access to this entire musical library for $199, $300 off. That's a smoking deal you should definitely check out. So if you're like me and you're constantly under a deadline and panicking, Audio can help you out, and you can definitely use my coupon code to save some money. Thanks, Audio, for sponsoring this episode. So as I just stated there, my experience with the FX5 has been extremely limited so far, and that's why this isn't going to be a full review. But when I was looking at the specs and doing some very preliminary testing with it, it's really easy to recognize that this camera represents a big change with how Sony is actually approaching cinema cameras. So I think this is one of the most, I'm going to say it, game-changing cameras that Sony has ever produced, but I'm going to back it up. I'm going to take a look at the specs and features of this camera and tell you why it represents something entirely new for cinema shooters. Let's kick things off with the heart of the camera, which is the sensor. So this is a 16.6 megapixel sensor, a number we hadn't seen before, but I don't think this is a totally new sensor, because if we think 16.6 times 4, assuming this might be a quad Bayer type pattern, then we're looking at 66.5 megapixels, the exact same count we recently saw on the Sony a7R6. It's a very capable video camera, and looking at our readout speeds on this, rolling shutter numbers are extremely similar, if not identical, to that camera. So I do think it's using a variation of that sensor. So while this isn't giving you extremely high resolution, there's no 8K recording in this sensor, it is giving you some really cool tricks. This has 3 native sensitivities, and unlike standard 4K recording, this is recording full width in 5K, giving you just a little bit more detail. This is a real change from Sony in the past, where it was always 1080 recording, 4K recording, 8K recording, nothing in between, and I think this is a really useful feature here. So let's dig a little deeper into some of my findings with this sensor. Now, I mentioned how we have 3 gain settings on it, and these are native sensitivities where you'll get really clean results. Typically you have one for bright situations and one for dark situations, but there's typically a pretty big gap in between those 2 settings. What I really like that Sony's done here is you have an 800 ISO base for shooting out in bright light like we are right now, but also 4000, which is a really good middle-of-the-road sensitivity for shooting indoors or lit situations, dawn and dusk. And then for extreme low light, you also have a native sensitivity of 12,800. So basically, you could always be shooting at one of these 3 native sensitivities, giving you the best possible picture quality without having to use any of those in-between settings and wondering if you're sacrificing your image quality in some way. The other thing is Sony has been very hush-hush about their sort of DGO technology they're using, where it's blending 2 frames together to increase dynamic range. And we saw this on the a7R6, where you would get much slower readouts, so much more rolling shutter in the image, but with an expansion of dynamic range. And they're talking about it with this new camera. So we have the exact same option here. When you're doing typical recordings, you're under 10 millisecond readout, which is fantastic. You're very rarely going to run into rolling shutter stutter issues. If you kick this on, it actually more than doubles the readout speed on this, but you're getting expanded dynamic range. So it gives you both options and they're easily toggleable. If you're wondering about slow motion capability on this, it's very similar to the A7R6, but a little bit better. We can record 4.5K at 120 frames per second. There's also 1080 at 240 on this, but in the future, through firmware, there will be some expanded slow motion modes. We're going to talk about that a little later. All right, so there's nothing terribly revolutionary about the sensor. It's when we move over to the body itself that I think Sony has really been listening to professionals. It looks very similar to the FX3, but there's some smart changes here. It's a very minimalist layout on it, and we've got indexed buttons, which you can fully customize through the menu on it, but there's fewer of them to make room for this really big 3.5-inch display. Now, I would love to tell you what the resolution of that is. Sony hasn't told me. Maybe they'll tell me before this video comes out and I can put it on the screen. But this is the design that we love, where you can tilt it for the videographers who prefer that, or use it as a fully articulating display and keep it away from the ports. As well, you might notice I have put the optional electronic viewfinder on this. This is my favorite way to frame up video, and I think Sony's solution is really smart here. They've got a new proprietary port, and you can pop an electronic viewfinder with 3.69 million dots of resolution on there. This is also a tilting display, which is really nice if you want to shoot a little bit lower angle or your host is slightly shorter than you. As well, if you're looking to expand the audio support, this is compatible with an XLR attachment, which, like some of the recent cameras, gets you 32-bit float audio. But I find this a little bit frustrating, is you're going to have to choose between the electronic viewfinder, which is right close to the ports on the hot shoe that you'll need for the XLR attachment. I do hope they make a little adapter to snake a cable out to the side so you can still use 32-bit float, but for the time being, you got to choose. And for me, I'm going to choose the EVF. As well, we've got a new interface on this, and some of the smaller Sony FX series bodies were kind of a weird mishmash between Sony's Alpha interface and their more advanced professional ones. Here it's borrowing primarily from the more professional interface on it. So we've got the new heads-up screen where I can see basically all of my important camera settings at a quick glance. The menus are laid out just like the professional ones. I'm not thrilled to see the return of the paint option for setting all of your color profiles, but professional cinematographers will be very comfortable with this. As well, I love that this looks like a conventional control dial on the back, but we can also click it in, and this will move you through all of the manual modes through this entire interface. So it's just a matter of scroll click to customize any of your camera settings, and you don't have to do a lot of menu digging with this. As well, the move to the professional interface means that we get every kind of assist tool you could ask for, whether it's peaking, the focus map, waveforms, vector scopes, false color. It's all included in this body, and for the longest time I've been frustrated by missing some of these basic tools on what are supposed to be professional video cameras. But there's a couple other features that cinematographers and videographers have been crying their fool heads over for the longest time, and that's that they want internal raw video recording, something that Sony has stubbornly kept off even their more advanced FX series cameras up until this point. We can record Sony's professional raw video codec right to the memory cards on this. As well, they've finally done it, open gate recording, but there's some caveats there. So join me over in Caveat Corner and we're going to take a look at some of these. All right, welcome to my office for Caveat Corner, and as you're about to see, some of the raw video files from this camera are pretty beefy, so I've transferred them on to this Glyph EX80 SSD, which has a sustained write speed of 7,000 megabytes per second, plenty fast, and I really like that it also has a tracker built into it that works with Apple's Find My. When memory's gotten as expensive as it has recently, maximizing your value is key, so check this out, just click the link in the description below. So let's talk about the raw video compression on this, and it is using Sony's X-OCN raw video compression that was first seen in the Venice, but I never really had an opportunity to play with those files. And it is a fairly efficient compression scheme. If you're recording the 5K open gate to a terabyte card, you're going to get anywhere between 3 and 5 hours of record time, depending on which compression you choose. So it is still going to be practical for some smaller scale productions. If you want to record the raw video, you're going to need to use a CF Express Type A card, and you really want to have a VPG 400 certified memory card. If you put something lower in, then it'll say that there could be recording issues with the speed of this card. And let's be honest, if you're recording raw video, it's probably for something pretty important, and you're gonna need to make sure that it's recorded properly. For that reason, you're gonna have to invest the extra money on VPG 400 cards with this. So when do you actually need raw video? Well, the advantages of raw video versus log recording are actually fairly small and nowhere comparable to the difference between a JPEG and a raw photo. So when you're shooting raw video, the big advantages you're going to see is more control over the white balance, the tint, and noise reduction. However, you're not going to see a huge difference in dynamic range. If you need the most flexibility in post and you're handing this off to a colorist, by all means use the X-OCN RAW files, but for the majority of shooters, I think you'll be very happy with the S-Log3 capture that this camera can offer. And that brings me to one of the biggest caveats with this camera, which is that if you want to record open gate video where it uses the entire height of the sensor, giving you some more reframing possibilities, well, at launch, that's only going to be possible if you're recording that raw video. And that means huge file sizes, and it's really going to limit the usefulness of this mode. And that brings me to one more major concern that I had when I was looking at the images out of the A7R5 and the A7R6. If you were shooting 4K, then those cameras didn't produce a very detailed image. It was just a little bit soft. So I'm hoping that the new 5K capture that we see in the FX5 will give us significantly more detail, but that's going to take more testing to really confirm. Okay, I'm done being a bummer. Let's go back outside and talk about more of what's exciting with this camera. Okay, and we're back from Caveat Corner because some things are definitely going to change with this camera, not only because this is a pre-production model, but because Sony's cinema division is actually pretty good with firmware updates. At the time of this camera's launch, they've already said, stay tuned because you're going to be able to record 4K 240p, you're going to be able to do open gate with some compression and better support for vertical video shooting. So a lot of this could still change even between now and when I do my full review. I think one of the reasons that the FX3 was such a massive success is because we really hadn't seen a lot of small cinema cameras that still had actually pretty reliable autofocus and some stabilization, though certainly not best in class. But both of those things have improved enormously from Sony. You have to remember the FX3 actually came out before their new AI chip, which really does help with the stickiness of autofocus. And they've made some real tweaks to the stabilization as well, particularly in terms of roll. If you were walking with the camera, you'd often find your horizon really skewing. The new stabilization should help with that. As well, you are going to get gyro metadata, so you can apply even more stabilization through their Catalyst software, which I don't like really, but it is going to give you an improvement in stabilization. But that's why this isn't a full review. I just haven't had enough time to find out how the autofocus stabilization is performing. As well, this is an actively cooled camera, but we still want to do some overheating tests on it as well in the future with a production camera, so stay tuned. Chris, you sure you want to leave this here in the frame?
Yes, I want it there creatively, and I told you, don't discuss the cat. Don't even look at it. Don't look at it. Don't touch it. Just ignore the cat.
No, I'm going to ignore your advice. If you're missing a small cat stuffy, it's here at the park right by 130th Shopping Center here in Calgary. Let's talk about the camera, and why I think that this is such an important development for Sony is there was some really aggressive segmentation from them where I feel like they were just kind of ignoring what everybody else in the industry was doing. And I really think the FX5 marks a turning point for that. And it's a very flexible camera. I mean, do you want to use an EVF? Sure, use an optional EVF on there. Do you like tilt screens? Do you like fully articulating screens? Covered on all of those fronts. And there's going to be a lot of times where you're a professional where you're going to be given the requirement for a specific type of shooting. You might have to record raw video right into the camera. Well, now you can do that. You might need to record open gate video. And I think Sony shooters have been frustrated for a very long time because they saw these features starting to be found in other professional cameras from other manufacturers, and it's great to finally see them being embraced here on this latest model. As well, I think this gives us a really clear indication of what Sony's future FX series are going to look like. I mean, a lot of people were really hoping for ND filters in this camera. I think it's a no-brainer. We're going to see an FX6 replacement with most of this technology with the variable NDs, SDI ports, Genlock, all of those other professional features that you're looking for. I think the FX5 really represents the start of where hopefully the entire Sony cinema lineup will just be adding on more and more professional features to a base package that can still handle most types of work. And I think that is a huge development. But I want to know, do you think this really changes things for Sony? Let us know down below, and we're going to be talking about this on the PetaPixel podcast. You can watch it right here on this same channel, or just listen to it on all of your favorite podcasting apps. And if you want to support the work we do, well, the best way to do that is with a PetaPixel membership. And you're not just doing it for us. Look at all of these perks. There's so many here. I've reformatted this page a bunch of times just to fit them all in there. So thank you so much for joining me for my initial look at the Sony FX5. We're going to have a full review coming very soon, and you can look for that right here on PetaPixel.